In addition to constructors and classes in this Unit 4, I also want to show you a couple other pieces, including the math class. And if you have the Java.language math class, it allows you to do and perform some mathematical functions. And what I want to show you from here is you can automatically use some of these pre-written methods that are part of something called a package or a library of classes. So if we import these libraries or packages in, they are available to use within our code. And one of these is called the java.lang or language package. It's automatically imported into every Java program. So this is pretty common. And the Java language.math class has methods that you might use in mathematics. So let me show you a few of these. For example, if you use this ABS method, of course, you'd have to have that first line. We'll look at code in a second. And that would give you the absolute value of X. If it's been a while since you've been in a math class, that just says how many units away from 0 is it? So it basically gets rid of the sign. So the absolute value of 5.1 would be 5.1. If the absolute value of negative 5.1 would be 5.1. It's how far is it from 0 on the number line. And some of you may have seen this in advanced math classes like cosine, sine, tangential waves, and all kinds of things. For example, even exponents, that's pretty common, and logarithms. So if you need any of these items, they would be helpful. But let me show you them used in code. I think that'll be a little more helpful. So notice first, I've imported the package called java.lang.capital math, and that is for that list. I'm going to be using them here. I'm going to use absolute value is the one that I've decided to use. And I also going to show you some random numbers that really aren't part of the math class, but hint, 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 they might help you do this week's assignment. So let's say I have some a float value. F just makes it a float value, 1.2345, and then negative 857.54. If you were to use this math class, math.abs, it would take the X, which is 1.2345, and show you the math absolute value. Let's look down below. So the absolute value would just be how many units away from 0? It would be 1.2345. And if I were to make that a negative, the same result. Then we're going to take this number, negative 857. The absolute value of that is 857.54. And if I didn't want to assign a variable, I wanted to show you I could make these values float by just using them here. So, and they would print out, in this case, 145 units from 0. And there's also a math class called math.random. And what math.random does is provide a random number between 0 and 1. And not the random number you would think of. It's a long, long decimal. It's usually very long. I'll show you in a moment. So let's say we have the computer randomly create two different decimals right here, A and B. Of course, they're doubles. They're really long. And we're printing them out. Let's look down here. This first time, it gave me like 0.2427. Second time, 0.10. And I want to show you what they mean by random every single time I run. I'm going to get two different ones, now 0.7 and 0.4. Let's run again. And to make these random numbers useful, I would highly recommend, let's do this here, that we multiply them, let's say, by 100. So that would at least get me in the category of maybe being between 1 and 100. So let's run that again. And now my random number here is going to be like 24. If I round that off, it would just be the number 24 or the number 47. And guess what? The round is also a mathematical function here. So there are a lot of them. So I've added one more math. Notice same exact program that I was showing you moments ago, but now I've put math.round in front of the A or B, which are random numbers between 1 and 100. And the first time I run it, I got the two numbers 15 and 48. Let me run that again, and then I get 71 and 82. They were probably a lot more decimals on that, obviously, but the round takes care of them. And it does round if it's 0.5 or above. So every time I run that, I could get basically, in this case, my two lucky numbers. Here are some other common math class methods. For example, if you had max used with a math class of x and y, it would tell you whatever number is larger, or min smaller. So if this were 17 and 71, it would give you the result if I use max of 71. If I use min, it would be 17. Hey, pal of x, y, let's say x were 3 and y were a 2. 3 to the power of y, so 3 squared would be 9. There's that random, and don't forget, very helpful to multiply it by 100 if you're not getting them to guess random, very, very, very long decimals between 0 and 1. And here's some other really great ones. This shows the closest integer to x. If x is a double and the return value is expressed as a double. So, in other words, is it closer to the next number or is it closer to the lower number? We talked about round. This could be an int or a long. Where x is a float or a double, the return value will be int or a long. And there's that sign by the way, that's trigonometry. I don't think you'll have a lot of use for that, but you never know. Here's square root. So like the square root of 9 would be 3. And here's that tangent. So this would really help put all of those pieces together. Also, you'll see something called a wildcard symbol. This is an alternative to importing a particular class. So it just means anything in that class. Let me show you what one would look like. Let's say you wanted to use the time class. This is different than the math class. But there's a lot in the time class. For example, how to find out what today's date is, or what a month from now is, a year from. So we could do something like import java.time.wildcard. This wildcard is actually used even at Google. Let me show you. Even if I go to like a search engine like Google and I say, hey, find anyone with the beginning name of Corey with an asterisk, this wildcard, and ends with an asterisk, Hoising asterisk. This just means any ending. So this is used in databases. Google's really a big database. So when I now search, I might get things that start with a Korean, like hoisin peanut sauce by Corey Gladden. So that had it. But if we kept scrolling down here, or I gave it a little more information, maybe an N, we'd find hopefully Corinne Hoisington, how the name might end. So wow, a lot of people with my same name. So let's go back there again. So now we can see in this particular math program, local date.now would be a mathematical class that we're using there. And let's see, we could find out if today's graduation day was May 29th, 2018, we could find out today's date and the graduation date. So it could use some of these local time classes. And if you get a chance, if you just type in java.time.asterisk, even at Google, you could see there are, one of my favorite places to look is something called www.w3schools.com. This is a great way to find out everything that's in Java, different constructors, different libraries. And so if you're ever asked to do something like, find the local date today, or the local time, or the local date and time, this is all, by the way, based on your clock of your computer. But you wouldn't have to say java.time.localDate. You could just put a substitution of that wildcard or that asterisk here. for that to create today's date. In this case, I'm recording this on September 7th. So that's a little bit about the math time class. And I think that might help you do your assignment in a moment.